The My Apps screen is the initial screen you'll see when you sign in to RapidBIZ. It shows all applications if you're logged in as an administrator, and only the applications I'm authorized for if I'm logged in as a developer. To create a new application, click Build New App. The screen is the application container. It has all the default information about the application. I'm going to give the application a name, and if I like, I could group it with other applications, so when I use the built-in RapidBIZ application portal, they will all be placed in the same group or category. This is very helpful if you have several applications used to handle similar processes. We provide a number of default styles for both classic and responsive user interfaces. I'm selecting the nimble responsive style. You can set the default position on screen elements. This is primarily for classic screens. This setting does not affect label positioning on responsive screens. You can set the default date format that will be seen by the user here. You can also set the default currency and currency symbol. So when data is identified as a currency, it shows the proper designation and/or symbol. When a field is identified as containing a phone number, no matter how the user keys in the format, it will be set to the format you select in phone number. This image is where you can set the format type of an element in the Screen Designer. Note that this is where the currency type can be set also. In application settings, application availability is set to on, meaning the application is available to the developer and any authorized users who have access to the application URL. This is all that's required to deploy a RapidBIZ application. Once the application is saved, an application URL and iframe URL will be generated and will fill these fields. This is a direct URL to the application versus going through the RapidBIZ application portal. Clicking Save or Apply will create the application and take you directly to the Screen Designer. This is the Screen Designer. At the top, you'll see a ribbon that contains all the different element types you can drag and drop onto the grid below it. Screen Settings has a number of important attributes. First, we'll give the screen a name. Since I actually didn't set the style when I created the app, I can select the style that will be used for this screen now. I'll make this screen responsive and choose the skeleton framework. Under the Advanced tab, I'll select the table that elements like text fields will be linked to. It automatically chooses the default ID column set in the data table. You can change this and use your own key value if you like. GetID is a standard function that automatically works with linked fields with the default key column. I'll drag on our first element. It's a text field. It's yellow because it's currently not linked to a column in the table. The panel on the right, Object Attributes, lets you set various attributes for the fields. You can select the field type. Default is a standard text field for inputting and displaying information. Currency and currency amount allows you to tie multiple fields together so that if you were to select a currency from a drop-down that has a different format, that's the placement of the comment separators, it would automatically set the format for the field or fields it's tied to. It's a very handy function when working with international currencies. You can set the default value if you like, and you can set the format. I mentioned this earlier when we were setting the phone format when creating the app. This also allows you to identify the field as a currency field. So when a value is placed in it, it formats it correctly and places the proper symbol if in the manual mode. In the manual mode, it will assume a US dollar format. When set to a date format, it will use the default that was set in the application container. This will automatically add a date picker to the field. You don't need to use formatting if your database column is identified as a date column. It will automatically add the date picker in this case. There are also predefined values that can fill a text field. Selecting application name will put the application name in the field. You can also select the user's name or the user's email. RapidBIZ will pick this up from the login credentials. This comes in handy when you want to record the user that created or last updated a record. All the functions I've just taken you through require no coding, just point and click. There are also programmatic ways to do many of the things we just went through also. Check the help text. I'll give the text field a label, first name, and I'll link it to the appropriate database column. I'll add several more fields, and while I'm doing that, I'll explain the advantage of linking fields. Later, I'll drag on a Save button. The Save button calls a built-in RapidBIZ function called add_update_db_record. And because the screen knows what the table is and where each of the elements are linked, you don't have to do anything else. When the Save button is clicked, it will insert or update a record. There are many times where either prior to the save or immediately after the save you want to take some action. Maybe it's setting a date or a flag for some reason. You can still use the Save button, but change it to call a function you create where the button is clicked. In your function, you'd put the things you want to do first, then use the add_update_db_record to insert the record. Now I'll drag on a layout area, or a div. We're going to use this to group the elements. Layout areas are used frequently, just like you might use a div in a more traditional programming approach. We'll give it a title of applicant information and change the hide collapse style. I place the elements roughly how I'd like to see them, but it's time to place them in the responsive grid. The responsive grid is 12 columns wide. Default is 1 column width, but you can change from 1 to 12 columns in width as you work with the grid. I'm setting the default width to 3 columns, meaning I'm going to set my field width to 3 columns. I'll select the first field to drag on and place it in the grid. I'll select and drag on the rest of the fields. While that's being done, I'll explain that sometimes you want to merge columns. That can be done in a couple ways. One, by selecting all the columns horizontally that you want to merge and then hit the Merge button. The other way is to highlight the first cell and then hold down the Shift key and select the last column in the range. This will merge all columns between the highlighted column and the one you clicked. To remove a field, you simply drag the field up to the Remove box and it will be removed. Through the magic of video production and in the interest of time, the rest of the fields have been added. We'll go ahead and save the grid and we'll save the screen. Now we'll go ahead and preview the screen. You'll see that in the preview mode the screen will function normally, but it will not navigate to other screens or any other types of navigations. The preview is just for this screen. You just saw the preview. Let's look at it through a normal browser just like a user would do. I'm logging into an instance of RapidBIZ and selecting the RapidBIZ organization, or sub-instance if you will. Our example is on. And I'm an administrator, so I'll select Act as a user. This is one example of a standard RapidBIZ application portal. This will show all the apps I'm authorized to use. I'm selecting the video example that we previewed. While this is only a screen, to RapidBIZ it's an entire application, ready to be extended and enhanced. Only thing we're missing on this screen is a Save button, which we'll add later.